Israeli military investigating whether Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar was killed in Gaza. Israel's military is investigating whether Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar was killed in a military operation in the Gaza Strip. During IDF operations in the Gaza Strip, 3 terrorists were eliminated. The IDF and ISA are checking the possibility that one of the terrorists was Yahya Sinwar. At this stage, the identity of the terrorists cannot be confirmed, the Israel Defense Forces said in a statement. Sinwar is the most significant Hamas figure still at large, and Israel considers him the mastermind of the deadly October 7th attacks that triggered Israel's ground invasion of Gaza. He has not been seen in public since the Hamas attacks, and is thought to have been hiding in the vast network of tunnels worming their way under Gaza. U.S. officials have long looked to Sinwar's eventual death as a key opportunity to end the Israel-Hamas war. U.S. officials were mum in the immediate moments after the Israel Defense Forces announced it was investigating whether a strike in Gaza had taken out Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar. If Sinwar is in fact confirmed dead, the ramifications for the Biden administration would be momentous. His potential death, perhaps more than anything else, the singular event that many U.S. officials had pointed to as the biggest potential game-changer in the Israel-Hamas war that has now been ongoing for more than a year. With a ceasefire and hostages deal to pause the war stubbornly stuck for months, senior administration officials had hung on to hope that Sinwar might one day be taken out, and that could open up doors that simply would not be otherwise. U.S. officials have looked at Sinwar, simply put, the scalp that Israel needs most to be able to declare that they are done with the Gaza war, even in discussions of a so-called all-for-all deal. The idea that every hostage held by Hamas would be released in exchange for every Palestinian prisoner that Hamas wants freed, which is widely viewed as far-fetched. Some U.S. officials had mused perhaps such an idea could be remotely viable if Sinwar were dead. Sinwar hasn't been seen in more than a year. One of Israel's most wanted men, Yahya Sinwar, hasn't been seen since the war between Israel and Hamas began on October 7, 2023. He also hadn't been publicly heard from for almost a year, until mid-September. On September 10th, he issued his first statement since the war, congratulating Algerian President Abdelmajid Tebboune for his election victory, according to Hamas's Telegram channel. The next day, his office said he wrote letters thanking those who offered condolences after the death of Ismail Haniyeh, his slain predecessor. And on September 13th, a letter was sent to then Hezbollah chief Hassan Nasrallah. CNN could not verify if Sinwar was indeed the author of the letters. Sinwar was named political leader of Hamas after Haniyeh was assassinated in the Iranian capital Tehran in July. He is seen as more hardline than his predecessor in dealings with Israel, and favors cooperation and closer ties with Iran and allied Islamist groups such as Hezbollah. Unconfirmed images purported to be of Hamas chief's body circulating on social media platforms. Unconfirmed pictures purported to show the dead body of Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar are circulating widely on social media. In them, a man strongly resembling Sinwar can be seen lying dead in the rubble of a destroyed building with serious injuries to the skull. CNN's photo desk has run the images through authenticator software, which shows no signs of image manipulation. It is not location or time frame of his death from the still photographs. CNN has not yet been able to confirm the identity of the man seen in the photographs. The Israel Defense Forces said on Thursday it was investigating whether the Hamas leader has been killed in Gaza. No sign of harm to hostages during Gaza operation that may have killed Sinwar, Netanyahu says. There were no signs of harm to any hostages in the Israeli operation in Gaza that may have killed Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said. Netanyahu's spokesperson said that the Prime Minister had instructed the Israeli military to tell families of hostages there were no signs of harm. The Prime Minister had instructed the Israeli military to tell families of hostages there were no signs of harm to the hostages in the encounter in question. Israeli sources say a man believed to be Sinwar was killed during a routine operation. Israeli forces encountered a man believed to be Yahya Sinwar during routine military operations in the Gaza Strip. 2 Israeli sources familiar with the matter said. Israeli infantry troops encountered 3 militants near a building in Gaza and engaged them, the sources said. After the battle ended, troops found a body resembling Sinwar's and alerted senior commanders. The Israeli military and intelligence services have since been working to identify whether the body is indeed Sinwar's through DNA analysis, the sources said. Earlier on Thursday, Israel's military said it was investigating whether Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar was killed in military operations in the Gaza Strip. Who is Yahya Sinwar, the Hamas leader Israel calls the architect of the October 7th attacks? Yahya Sinwar is Hamas's leader in Gaza, and one of the key architects of the October 7th attacks into southern Israel, making him one of the key targets of Israel's war in the Palestinian enclave. The Israeli military is investigating whether Sinwar, who has not been seen in public for more than a year, was killed in Gaza. Sinwar was appointed the new head of Hamas's political bureau, following the assassination of his predecessor, Ismail Haniyeh, in late July, casting him as one of the militant group's most potent figures. He was convicted in 1988 of playing a role in the murder of 2 Israeli soldiers and 4 Palestinians suspected of collaboration with Israel, and spent more than 2 decades in Israeli prison. Sinwar later said he had spent those years studying his enemy, including learning to speak Hebrew. He has been designated a global terrorist by the U.S. Department of State since 2015 and has been sanctioned by the United Kingdom and France. Sinwar joined the Palestinian group in the late 1980s and was responsible for bolstering Hamas's military wing before forming key ties with regional Arab players. He was born in 1962 in a refugee camp in Khan Yunis, southern Gaza. Decades earlier, his family fled Al-Majdal, a village in historic Palestine during Al-Nakba, or the catastrophe, along with 700,000 Palestinians who fled or were forcibly expelled from their homes following the 1948-49 war in what is now Israel. Biden has been briefed by his national security advisor about Sinwar en route to Berlin. President Joe Biden is being updated on the potential developments relating to Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar by U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan aboard Air Force One. Biden, Sullivan, and Secretary of State Anthony Blinken are currently on their way to Germany. The Israelis have told the U.S. they're doing the DNA testing now. U.S. officials are not yet sure what Sinwar's death means for the Israel-Hamas conflict. U.S. officials are making no immediate statements about the potential death of Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar and what this might mean for the future of the Israel-Hamas war. "We don't know what this means yet," said a U.S. official. "There could be rapid movement towards a ceasefire and hostage deal, or there could still be a long path ahead." Secretary of State Antony Blinken had previously said that the fate of the deal when it comes to driving a ceasefire and hostage deal between Israel and Hamas was in Sinwar's hands. But U.S. officials are not saying today that his death will result in a deal overnight. The ongoing military conflict between Hezbollah and Israel could also complicate any potential opportunity for bringing the sprawling conflict to an end, the official said. Keep in mind, the U.S. has been sharing intelligence with Israel regularly to try and identify Sinwar's whereabouts, but it's not clear that any of that intelligence contributed to this specific operation. Sinwar hasn't been seen since the war between Israel and Hamas began on October 7, 2023. He also hadn't been publicly heard from for almost a year, until mid-September. The IDF is more surprised by this than we are, the official said, noting that Israelis have told them that this was not an operation that they had been carrying out specifically to target Sinwar. Sinwar reportedly killed after a tank fired at a house in Gaza, Israeli Army radio says. Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar Israeli Army radio reported. According to the radio station, which is state-funded and operated by the Israel Defense Forces, the Israeli military detected suspicious movement on the upper floor of a building in the early hours of Thursday morning, so fired at it with a tank. Later in the morning, Israeli Army radio said, a drone scanned the area of the attack, and soldiers recognized the face of Sinwar in the rubble. The IDF had previously detected unusual activity in the area, the radio station reported, so decided last week to increase scans and not to leave.